I've spent my entire life either in water, on my way to water, in school just waiting for the bell to ring so I can get to water, or talking about water. It's safe to say I've spent my entire life swimming. Growing up in a single-parent family, my mom wasn't able to afford much. But what she could afford was for us to swim. So we swam. And soon, the water became like a security blanket for me. It's where I felt at home because it's where my family was. When I was 8 years old, I was diagnosed with a motor tic disorder. Now, this is really similar to Tourette's, but instead of involuntary sounds, it's involuntary actions and behavior. Swimming wasn't just something I loved to do anymore, but something I had to do in order to feel like myself. And it didn't matter to me that I wasn't the fastest in the pool or that my flip turns were absolutely terrible. And all of these embarrassing moments that today might seem so monumental to me, then they were just a small irritation on my way into the pool. And that's because of what I can say I know now for sure, and what I think 10-year-old me was getting the hang of. Struggle isn't a foe, it's a friend. I was terrible at pool technique, so I became an open water swimmer. Now, I'm 14 years old, and I'm standing on the edge of the Welland Canal dock to get in for a 2-hour training swim. I'm only 3 months away from my world record attempt on Lake Ontario. When all of a sudden, all of these rowers come out onto the water, and my mom tells me that for safety, I'm gonna have to swim along the side of the canal. I'm 14 years old, I don't care about safety. I'm thinking about the seaweed and the slime and the snakes that I know are at the side of that canal. And my mind was so stuck in the utter uck of having to swim there that I wasn't focused on my goal, and I didn't get in. My mom, being who she is, had me go back later to redo it. Except this time, she wasn't getting in with me. So I get in the water, and I know that my mom's walking along the path beside me, but I can't see her. All I can see is what's underneath me. And it was during that swim that for the first time, I truly understood what it meant to feel alone, what it meant to feel afraid. I had seen those snakes before. But then I finished. And I finished happy with a lot of seaweed in my hair. But I finished knowing that when I was afraid, when I felt alone, I could push through it. So of course I finished the swim and I feel on top of the world. I've swam with the snakes. I've swam in cold water. I've even swam in the dark. But then I had to learn things I didn't even know I had to know. Like, how was I going to feed myself? I couldn't just waltz over to the fridge in the middle of my swim. So my mom and I, we start trying out all of these incredible products that these legendary swimmers before me had used. Marilyn Bell, Vicki Keith, and not one of them worked. And I was so disappointed, so frustrated. How could I expect to be great if I can't use the same products as these great swimmers? Have you ever felt that way? Just so completely frustrated because what someone says should work for you just doesn't? When I felt that way, I went for a swim because it's what always makes me feel better. So while I was training, my mom would do her research, and when I wasn't training, I could help. And eventually we found a solution, the Targo. But it was a solution because it was my solution. What works for everybody else won't always work for you. Not everyone fits the same mold. But there is a solution. Last summer, my mom sat me down, and she said that we wouldn't be swimming in the canal anymore. And obviously I'm concerned, but basically they had found beavers. Now when you hear the word beaver, you probably think of what? A cute little fuzzy animal Maybe one we used to all sing about in primary school. Not true, okay? Beavers have teeth, huge teeth that they use to chop down trees, aka your legs, okay? Beavers are territorial. Beavers can be aggressive. Safe to say I'm still a little petrified of beavers. But 3 weeks later, I find myself once again standing at the edge of the well and canal. It had been raining and I had to get a swim in. 3K later, my mom yells across the canal, "Trinity, you have to swim faster out into the middle of the canal. You can't stop. Go faster." So naturally, I do the opposite. What had happened was my mom had seen a giant beaver dive into the water, and it was now swimming towards me. I freaked out. Now my arms were flailing, and my head was out of the water. I was crying hysterically. Now, was it likely that I was going to be attacked by a beaver? No. But was the fear real? Yes. And my mom, my sister, they were telling me how to finish safely, but I was so focused on my own fear, my own interpretation, that I wouldn't listen. If I had, I would have been done a lot sooner, and this story would be far less embarrassing. Sometimes we can't just believe in ourselves, but we have to put our faith in other people. We have to believe in them, but that's hard. Because putting your faith in another person means you're admitting you have very little control over the situation. And that's scary, really scary. Now it's 2014, and now I'm in Lake Ontario. And I've been swimming since morning, the day before. And my arms are aching, and my back is sore, and my fingers and toes are so wrinkly, I look like I'm 90 years old. But that's okay, because I can see it, the Toronto skyline, my finish, my goal, and I'm so close. And then it's gone. And then the rain starts pouring, and the waves start crashing, and that threatening thunder, I can hear it approaching. It's over top of me. I'm done. And I'm looking around for my crew, for my mom, Vicky, and I don't see them anywhere. I'm scared. But then I hear them. They're in zodiacs, and they're coming in closer. They're directing me in and out of storms, keeping me safe, pointing me to my finish. That day, I made it to Maryland Bell Park. Even with one last wave throwing me and a rather large log into the concrete, black eye and all. But if I hadn't swam with the snakes, if I hadn't swam in cold water, if I hadn't swam in the dark, if I hadn't swam every single time I didn't want to, I never would have been able to swim through that storm. Struggle wasn't my foe, it was the reason I finished, it was my friend. But when I touched the wall in Maryland Bell Park, I knew that even in the hardest parts of that swim, when I felt like I was truly alone, I never was. Because my crew believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. When I couldn't see my finish, they could see it for me. About a year ago, I decided I had one last big swim left in me. One last big swim before I really had to calm down on training and focus on my schoolwork. After talking with my mom and talking with some other people, I decided I wanted that to be the English Channel. England to France, a legendary swim in my realm of sport. And I was so excited, but I can honestly say, from the minute I made that decision to the minute we got to England, it was one big year of struggle. Struggle to get training time in, struggle to get the money to go, just general lack of knowledge. But that was okay, because you see, for months we had this giant poster up in our living room. It was a map of my route, Dover, England to Calais, France. And when I got to England, there were swimmers from all over the world. And I was so excited to tell them about my route, but the minute I told them about my destination, all I heard was laughter. It turns out Calais, France, and Cap, Grenade, France, are two very different locations. For the past year, I hadn't even visualized my swim correctly. And now I'm standing on the beach in Dover, England, looking across to France, and I can't see it. There was too much fog, and doubt was creeping in. Now, I'm sure most of us here have been to Port Dalhousie, right? For those of you who haven't, when you stand at the end of the pier and you look straight across to Toronto, you can see the CN Tower. You can see the whole skyline, really. Some days it looks so close you can almost touch it. I've swam there, so I can promise you it's not that close. But in Dover, there's so much fog on top of the channel that you can't see France. And it just looks like endless amounts of water. So for 3 weeks I sat. For 3 weeks I watched swimmers leave. Some were successful, some weren't. For 3 weeks I stared at what seemed like endless amounts of ocean. What if I didn't have it in me? What would I think of myself if after all my family's been through to get here, I can't do this? What are the people back home going to think of me? They believed in me. What if I let every single one of them down? For 3 weeks, that was all I could think about. One day we decided maybe I had lost my shot. We said tomorrow we should start packing up a few of our things. And then, the strangest thing happened. The English Channel completely opened up. It was the strangest meal. For the first time in 2 months, standing on English soil, you could see France. It was in that moment that I had to believe that this swim was a part of some bigger plan. Why else after 3 weeks of waiting? Why else the day before we were about to give up? The next day, a weather window did open up, and I got to start my swim across the English Channel. I can't explain why, and I can't explain how, but it was like the minute I got in the water, I felt like I was being carried. And I knew I would finish because I knew that this swim had to be a part of something bigger. When's the last time you were in a situation where you just had trouble believing you could do it? You stopped yourself short because maybe you didn't think you were capable. Or maybe you thought it would be too hard. You lost faith. Someone let you down. You let yourself down. I'm here to tell you to keep trying. If you had seen the little girl I was, never quite meddling in her events, and doing some embarrassingly bad flip turns, you never would have thought she'd be a world record holder in ultra-distance marathon swimmer. You can't let it stop you. When you set a goal, people will help you. And amazing things happen when you just try. And it may not be the people you think. It may not be your best friend. But incredible people will come around you. And I know there are days where the chaos makes it seem like it's just too overwhelming. Days where you can't see where you're going because there's just too much fog. But there is a bigger plan, one that we are all a part of. But you have to take the first step. Because one day the fog will clear, and for the first time in a long time, you'll be able to clearly see where you need to go. But you have to be ready for that moment. You have to experience the struggle. You have to give it everything you have. Struggle believes you can push through, and so do I. On September 14th, I finished my swim across the English Channel. But only because first, I believed in myself. I learned how to believe in others. And I believed that my swim was a part of something bigger. And I knew someone was watching over me. So what are you going to believe in? Who are you going to believe in? Because when you believe in yourself, when you believe in other people, but when you put your faith in something bigger than just yourself, anything is possible. Thank you.